Hey everybody. Today I want to go through the Make a Minimal Vector Portrait tutorial again to better explain and clarify some of the tools and techniques they're using in that tutorial. So here we are in Illustrator, and the first thing that I will do is open the picture that we're going to work on, which is model bunch of numbers. Now with my selection tool, I'm going to grab this model layer and move her into the center of my frame. I'm going to change her opacity to 50% so that I can see what we're working on as we sort of vectorize this picture. And I'll come over to the Layers tab, call this Background Model, and I want to lock the layer. First, we named the layer so that we always know which layer we're working on and what's on that layer. And second, we lock the layer so that we won't accidentally select it. Then I create a second layer and name it Face, and that's where we'll draw the face on. I'll zoom in a little bit, and then to make drawing easier, I'm going to turn on my rulers by pressing Command R. I'll come over onto the ruler, click and drag out a guide onto the model's face to divide her face in half. Back on the Properties panel, I'm going to turn off the fill so as not to get confused here and create a stroke of 1 point. Now I can begin drawing. Press Option as you click in order to draw a straight line. You can see how the icon changes there as I make that line. Now I'm going to join this half of the face back to my guide, and I'm going to hold down the Option key as I click this guide. Then that will create a straight line, and I'll continue to hold the Option key down to connect that straight line to my original anchor point. Over under the Layers tab, I'll turn that model layer off, and we can see the shape that I just drew. This is a stage where we've had some trouble with the Rotate tool, and it's not well explained in the tutorial. In order to duplicate this half of the face and flip it over, to make the model's face, we'll choose the Reflect tool, which is accessible under the Rotate tool, or by hitting the letter O on your keyboard. Let's use the Select tool again and select this path, this object that I've created of this half of her face, and I will select the Reflect tool. And what you're doing here with the Reflect tool, you actually have to set 2 points around which the reflection works. First, I'm going to press Command C to copy this path, and then choose Edit, Paste in Place. Now I have a second path on top of the path that I drew with the curvature tool. I've copied it and pasted it in the same place. Then I'll select the Reflect tool again, and I'll set an origination point, and then set another point around which the reflection is being reflected. There. So you actually have to set 2 points when you're using the reflection tool. Then I'll choose my selection tool again and select both of these paths. Then under the Properties panel, under Pathfinder, I'll click Unite. Now we've joined these two paths. We've joined these two paths into a single path. We've united them. And now you can see I click one time and the whole face shape is selected. Now that these paths have been united, I'm going to double click on the fill color and pick a fill color, press OK, and there we have it. Now I'm going to turn off the guide I have in the middle so that I can continue to trace the model's face using the curvature tool. My first step will be to come back to the Layers panel and create a new layer, and I'm going to call this one Features. Now I'll lock the face layer in addition to my background model layer, and I'm going to click the eyeball here on the face layer to turn that off so that I can see my model layer and draw on her. So bear with me. Okay, that's looking pretty good. And so now what I'm going to do is come in here and select some of these different items and choose a fill for them. Looks great. I'll come over here and And then I want to change the stroke on her earrings. I'll come over here and choose that stroke item and click on this kind of gold color here. I'll do the same on this side. Click on the gold color because I have the stroke active is what's happening here. These two items I'll fill. Oops. Yeah, because I still have the stroke active, right? I'm only lining her lips. So I'm going to swap these two again. Remember, these are separate paths, so they're actually on top of each other and not really inside of each other. Make this white for her teeth. Make her earring hoops a little thicker, right? Those don't really look right here. So we'll bump up that stroke. That looks a little better to me. We'll bump up this stroke. And so now that we've done all of that, let's press our space bar and Command minus to move her around a little bit. Now we can do her hair. I zoom out a couple of times so I can see what I'm doing. Here I'm going to click on layers again and choose to make a new layer, and I'll call this one hair. I'll lock the features layer and make sure I have the hair layer selected. With the ellipse tool, which is under the rectangle tool, I'll click and drag out to make her hair. If you hold down the shift key with the ellipse tool selected, you'll get a perfect circle. Now I'll choose the V key and I'll move this around to kind of get it in a good place for her. I'll come back. I'm going to turn off the stroke, but for the fill, let's fill it with that nice purple color. Now you can see that the hair is over her face. That's because of the stacking order. We created the hair layer last, and so it goes on top. I'll come here with my mouse cursor, click and hold on the hair layer, and drag it down until I see the little blue line highlight here under face. And now it's behind her head. We can apply a special effect to her hair. So with the hair selected, I'll come under Effect and choose Distort and Transform and then Zigzag. You should feel free to experiment with all of these to see what they do. Zigzag creates these points, which we can do like 20 points, 10 points, 4 points, etc. You can choose different options to see how that might change what you're making. Go with 8. All right. Ridges per segment. Let's try another number to see what happens. 1, 4, 10. All right. Looks cool. You can change whether they're smooth or pointed corners. We'll make these corners, and I'll choose OK. Now let's turn off that background model layer and see what we've got. That looks pretty nice. Now we're going to work on the hair. So with the hair selected, we can choose Object, Expand Appearance. That converts the zigzag path to a shape so that we can then use the Shapebuilder tool. So I'm going to hold down the Option key while I drag copies of the hair. I turn the hair into a shape, and then by holding down the Option key and dragging, I've created 2 additional versions of the hair. To help us see that, I'll choose Properties and change the fill for this one. And then here's the other one, and I can change the fill for that as well. Now that I have the 3 sections of hair colored that I'd like to get, I'm going to click and drag to select all 3 of those hair shapes. Then I'll select the Shapebuilder tool and hold down the Option key and drag through the points of the hair that are not part of my original selection. You can see them lighting up as I go through. And when I do this and let go of the key, I'm back here with my original hair shape. Now that I've got the hair done, I'm going to create a shadow. In order to do that, I'll unlock this features layer and the face layer so that I can make the changes that I want to make. I'll choose the curvature tool again. Out here on the stage, I'm going to just draw this curve so that I can then drag it onto her face. We've got this nice curve out here filled with black. And under Properties, I'll make the opacity 40%. With the Select tool, I clicked off of that shadow. And now what I'll do is drag it onto my image. I'll click on the shadow to expand it beyond the borders of her face, just to kind of cover up some more and see how that works. Now that I've dragged the shadow over here onto her face, we're going to go and use the Shapebuilder tool the same way we just did. Our first step is to choose the Selection tool and drag it over the elements in the image. Then we choose the Shapebuilder tool hold down the Option key because we are removing parts, and we're just going to come right there through the part of the shadow that's outside of her face and hair and remove it. Now we've got that nice shadow across her face and hair that makes it look a little bit more realistic. And here we are. So here we looked at how to reflect that half shape and how to use the curvature tool, fills and strokes, etc., to get this avatar turned out. So remember that with the select tool, I'll show you here on the stage again, right? We draw our curve, Option, straight line, great. To reflect something, we go under the rotate tool, choose reflect, and then we select on our path where we want the reflection to happen. So I've chosen 1 point and a second point, and I'll make it flip from left to right. I can choose edit, copy, and edit, paste in place. Now I have 2 versions of that half circle here. I'll choose my selection tool, select off just to make sure nothing is selected, and then select this one, which is the one that's lying on top. So that we can better see that, I'm going to change its fill, and now I will choose reflect and enter reflection point 1 and reflection point 2. I'll choose the selection tool, and we can see now that I've reflected once the black side onto the orange side. If you have any questions, please let me know. I think that that gets us through this exercise, and I hope I've answered some questions for you. Bye.